This look at Neil Young's weird experimental phase from the 80s is brought to you by my Patreon. Pledge $2 a month and you get access to my Discord server. Pledge $5 a month and you get early access to my videos. I'd like to welcome the new patrons. In the $2 tier we got Patrick Lauer, and in the $5 tier we've got Lizette G. Subscribe to them, by the way. They do this shit way better than I do. Keep in mind, I can't monetize any of my videos because copyright. Any ad revenue goes straight to the record labels and I get jack shit. So if you'd like to support this channel, then click the link below and hop on board. And now this. Oh man, look at my life. What we are watching right now is a shaky cam video of Neil Young performing Old Man in 2019 at all of 74 years old. And this old man has really come a long way.
Keep me searching for a heart of gold, and I'm getting old.
Neil Young has spent the 60s and 70s making a name for himself in the world of rock and roll, starting with Buffalo Springfield, then as the fourth member of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and then with his groundbreaking solo career throughout the 70s. And he did it all with a heart of gold.
I ain't tongue-tied.
But as the 70s became the 80s, Neil Young was getting burned out and tired of doing the same old shit. He wanted to start the new decade with a change of scenery. So he left Reprise Records and went to Geffen, an on-the-rise record label that had just scored big selling albums from Donna Summer and the late John Lennon.
I rode the high.
He promised Neil Young $1 million per album and, more importantly, complete creative control. Remember that part, it will come up again later. But with the great Neil Young on his roster, David Geffen and his little label that could is gonna ride that rocket ship to the top. He was banking on Neil Young bringing his Neil Young style to the 80s and ushering in an entire new generation of Neil Young fans. Here's what he got instead. Around the tail end of 1982, Neil Young released his first album with Geffen. It was called Trans, as in Neil Young says trans rights. Hope you all had a happy Pride Month, by the way. And yeah, this does not sound like the Neil Young we all know and love. Sounds like a robot saying a bunch of robot stuff over a mess of synthesizers. Just what even is any of this? Well, let's find out right now. Here's the first track, Little Thing Called Love.
See somebody walking down the street.
Okay. This definitely sounds like Neil Young.
Ah, little thing called love.
Yep, that is a normal Neil Young tune. Here's the part where I confess that I never really liked Neil Young.
Southern man, better keep your head.
I mean, he does have some songs I really liked. Southern Man, for example, is a better song than Sweet Home Alabama. But I just can't really get into him. Probably because that voice.
I can love, I can really love.
Yeah, this is not a voice I can stand to listen to for more than 2 tracks at best. And this folk rock music isn't exactly my kind of thing. But I can at least respect it for what it is.
Only love brings you the blues.
I like that part where he says love can bring you the blues. It's pretty good. And I can see why he made this the first track. Like, he wants you to think that this is a Neil Young album. You pop this piece of crap in expecting Neil Young, and what do you get? Just a Neil Young song. And just when you think you're about to hear a harvest for the 80s, this happens. By God. What is this nonsense? Well, this one is called Computer Age. He's singing through a vocoder. It's kind of interesting. And there's some decent drum machines, some pretty good guitar sound. I like the synths here. Yeah, this is pretty good. Here's the part where I tell you that I actually like this album. Like, a whole lot. It may be because I've never really been a Neil Young fan, so I can't really compare this to After the Gold Rush or any of his other big selling albums. But as a fan of electronic music, yeah, I'd say it's pretty solid. Especially at the end where it sounds like an Atari. Just awesome. So yeah, this gets a recommendation in my book. But I'm sure you guys came in here expecting some flaws, and yeah, this album does have them. Like when he makes his vocoder voice all high, that's irritating. Arguably more so than his regular voice. Like, this gets pretty close to ow my freaking ears territory. It's like he's trying to go for some kind of robo-opera singer. It doesn't work. He does the same thing a couple of tracks later on Transformer Man. I would be disappointed to know that this is not about Optimus Prime, but then I remember that Transformers wouldn't even be a thing for a couple of years. It's not terrible, but the voice is just way too much. But with all that said, there's something interesting that I want to point out here. See, around this time, Neil Young was having a hard time with his son, Ben, who was born with cerebral palsy and couldn't speak. The kid loved trains, so Neil would play trains with him, and while doing so, used vocoders to communicate with him. This would become the inspiration for the album, and it's said that songs like Transformer Man were him speaking directly to his son. It's pretty admirable. In fact, this isn't the first time Neil Young tried his hand at electronica. The previous year, he made an album with Crazy Horse called Reactor. It had some instances of the vocoder and synclaver, but it was still a regular Neil Young album. In fact, Trans was going to be another Crazy Horse album, but then he decided to replace Crazy Horse with crazy synthesizers. They, as you can imagine, were not amused. But he's Neil Young. He can do whatever the hell he wants. Or so he thought. We'll get to that later on. But first, let's get back to the album. Here's the third track, one that really showcases his vocoder skills. It's called We Capital Are in Control. It's a bunch of robots telling you all the things they control. And they control a lot of things. There's something very 1984 about this. And considering that the actual 1984 was a little over a year away at the time of the album's release, yeah, I would say this is very much of its time. Right down to the siren noise. This is when it really hits you that you're not listening to a normal Neil Young album. In fact, if there's one album that I can immediately compare Trans to, it would be an album that would drop just a couple of months later. That would be Kilroy Was Here, Styx's infamous abortion of a concept album from 1983. You probably know its lead-off single, Mr. Roboto, and if you're really up on your Styx or your Disaster albums, then you'd also know the story of the troubled production behind it, and that it ended up destroying the band beyond repair. If you don't, go watch the Train Records episode about it. Todd goes into a lot of detail about what went wrong. But here's how I would compare the two albums. Trans is the album Kilroy could've and should've been. Neil Young said in an interview with Q, the magazine, not the group of salty Trumpers, that he had a lot of ideas for the album. Like, there were film scripts for every song, characters, and all that stuff. But the technology wasn't exactly there yet. Still, he did his best to keep the concept going, whereas the Styx album was just Dennis DeYoung trying way too hard to get his bandmates in on his concept, and they were just not having it. Also, both albums were supported by tours, but while Styx's Kilroy tour was an awful mashup of concert and stage show, the Trans tour was an actual concert, with Neil Young playing his old hits and his new material and everything. To put it simply, Neil Young got right what D. Young got wrong. The fifth track is called Computer Cowboy, aka SYSCRUSHER. And goddamn does this crush. He's got the vocoder set on gritty, he's got a kick-ass guitar riff, and it gives you exactly what you're looking for in something called Computer Cowboy. Right down to the wood block. I definitely get the feeling of a more modern version of the Wild West here. Like throughout the album, there's themes of this new synthetic digital world encroaching onto our actual physical real world. So an old Western song about a cowboy with all the synth shit on it, yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good representation of the concept he's going for here. Oh god, he's doing the yippee-ki-yay motherfucker in the vocoder voice. This is officially Neil Young's best album. Sounds like it should be the theme for some kind of movie, doesn't it? In fact, this entire album sounds like it should be a film soundtrack, doesn't it? Well, it is.
Yeah, I've worked with radiators for 7 or 8 years. I fixed almost every radiator in every car in town. I even drank the water out of one of those radiators once, and I feel good.
This is Human Highway, a 1982 film in which Neil Young plays a very Rick Moranis-esque mechanic with dreams of becoming a rock star. The film is set in a gas station / diner in a small town on the last day of Earth before nuclear holocaust. It's got Dean Stockwell as the not-so-nice owner, Dennis Hopper as a cook long before his lucrative bus bombing career, and Twin Peaks' Dr. Lawrence Jacoby as Neil Young's sidekick. And yeah, the best way to describe this, it's a prototype David Lynch movie. It has the aesthetic, and several other cast members would go on to star in David Lynch projects. You can actually watch the director's cut for free on Internet Archive, and I recommend it. It's got a lot of crazy special effects. But here's where trance comes in. Several songs from the album have snippets playing in the background, including Transformer Man, Computer Cowboy, and We Are in Control.
I hate music.
But there are some other awesome musical moments as well. Here's Devo singing Worryman's Blues while loading toxic waste barrels onto a truck. And here's Neil Young and Devo doing a cover of Hey Hey My Into the Black. And here's one of the songs from Trans that isn't in the movie at all. Hold On to Your Love started off the second side. It's another normal sounding Neil Young song, once again designed to trick fans into thinking they're getting regular Neil Young. This one I never really cared about enough to listen to it all the way through. It just went in one ear and out the other for me. So let's skip ahead to the next track. This is one that I consider to be the centerpiece of the album, the definitive track, the one that I would pick to represent the album as a whole. It's called Sample and Hold.
Sample and hold.
Ah, yes. This is the album in a nutshell. Guitar going on in the background, lots of synths, and oh, that vocoder. Alright, so this is a song about dating. It starts off with what is basically an OkCupid profile set to music. He's listing all the things he's looking for in a robotic romantic partner. The eyes, the weight, if they have an average die income, Huh, what do you know? I guess this is Build-A-Bitch. But this is the future. And apparently in the future, dating doesn't work the normal way with the dinner and movie and all that junk. In fact, this is less futuristic dating and more futuristic ordering a mail order bride. Like, you just input your requirements and the machine artificially makes you a mate. Weird to think it, but this may have very well predicted the future of dating. You got apps like Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. They all kind of operate on a similar kind of mentality. Swiping left or right on someone? Yeah, I definitely get that same kind of sense of going online shopping for a romantic partner in these lyrics. Hell, the hook is a customer service representative. Of course he would use the opera voice for that character. Of course he would. But the production is absolutely where it's at. I really like how the guitar makes a lot of crunching sounds. And yeah, this definitely does not sound like Neil Young at all. In fact, here's what it reminds me of. There's acts like Yellow Magic Orchestra and Kraftwerk who were, simply put, the pioneers of electronic music as we know it today. And they're largely what this album reminds me of, especially Kraftwerk, who Young himself said had inspired him to go in this direction. And Sample and Hold is definitely the most Kraftwerk-inspired track on the entire album. In fact, I'd like to point out that I have yet to hear anyone sample and Hold. I have scoured as far as I care to, and I don't think anyone has ever sampled this, which to me seems like a waste. I mean, the word sample is right in the title. And at a little over 8 minutes long, this is pretty damn epic. Yeah, this is an example of how to make an 8-minute song the right way, as opposed to Elton John's 8-minute Pat It to Hell Johnny Be Good cover. Speaking of covers, let's go to the next track, Mr. Soul.
Oh, hello, Mr. Soul, I dropped by to pick up a reason.
Yes, that one. And why the fuck not? It is Neil's song. He wrote it. He was the one singing on it. If he wants to put a bunch of synth shit all over it, that's his prerogative. So let's hear how Neil Young updated one of his old tunes for a new age. Oh no. Oh no. This is gonna suck.
Oh, hello, Mr. Soul, I dropped by to pick up a reason.
Well, he seems to have set his vocoder to underwater mode. Yeah, this is terrible. Like, the original Mr. Soul had a more rockin' beat and vocals you can actually hear. This just takes all the fun out of it and replaces it with droning. It's like that dumb Rit Momney cover of Put Your Records On. It just ruins the original. And there's that irritating robo-opera singer voice again. Actually, I think I'll take that irritating back. I kinda gotten used to it now, I guess. Oh, hi. Who brought a chainsaw into the recording studio? Okay, look, guy. I know this is an experimental album, but a chainsaw as an instrument? Yeah, that just sounds dumb here. If you think it's such a great idea, by all means, start your own musical project. Because it doesn't work here.
Is it strange I should change? I don't know. Why don't you ask her?
Well, it took 8 tracks, but we finally have the laughable Neil Young electronica that I initially thought it was gonna be.
Like an Inca from Peru.
After that, the album wraps up with Like an Inca, a nearly 10-minute normal-sounding Neil Young song. And now that we've gone through the whole thing, it honestly feels kind of like a trip. We started out in the normal world, then we went into this crazy digital technic robotic computer world, took a little pit stop, pressed on, and now we're finally out of the digital woods. Overall, that was fun. I'd certainly do it again.
Why should we die?
Alright, so trans is all finished. Signed, sealed, delivered, and sent across the US.
Get back to the country, back where it all began.
Neil Young would go back into the studio to record his next project for Geffen, a country album called Old Ways. He took us to the future, and now he's gonna take us back to his roots. This is gonna be his pet project. He's already got plans for a sequel album. And then suddenly, this happens. Neil Young! Hey, Mr. Geffen, what can I do you for? What the fuck is this synth shit you just put on my label? It's not synth shit. It's electronica, you fucking prick. I don't care what fancy pants names you call it. This is not what I signed you to do at all. Whoa, calm down. You said you would give me complete creative control. That's why I signed with you. Yeah, creative control to make your own music. Your own music! Not this fucking hogwash. And what kind of crap are you trying to make now? Well, I'm doing this country album. Country? Oh, no. That's not gonna fly with me. No, you get rid of that shit now. Now you listen to me, David. No, you listen to me. I have built this label from the ground up with my own two hands. I have worked hard all my life to get where I am, and I'm not gonna get my label ruined because someone that I signed to a contract with my label decided to fuck around. Hey, I'm making the music that I want to make. You promised that I would be allowed to do what I want. I don't remember promising that. Well, I remember. In fact, I actually read the contract. It says right there on page 172. Well, fuck you then. I'm taking it back. You can't do that. The hell I can't. Now you cease doing whatever this hoobity-joob is that you're doing and get back in the studio and make a rock album. Or so help me God, I'll tear you a new one bigger than Lake Ontario. No us. You give me a rock album, okay? A rock album. And so Neil Young went back into the studio and gave David Geffen the rock album that he wanted.
Betty Lou got a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, that's what he wanted, right? Technically, this is rock music, so he got his wish. But that's a story for another video.
Betty Lou got a new pair of shoes. When she walked in the shoe store, picked up a shoe, took the number 12, but that wouldn't do.